Okay, hello everybody. This is the Gin and Tonic Show. It's the 24th of July, and we are talking about Islam. Now, what I thought today, what we're going to be talking about is because there were so many things happening in different cities and different countries, and for some odd reason, you're not really allowed to say, well, this was due to Islam, and people don't accept that Islam can be the cause of anything to do with violence. And if you do sort of insinuate it, you are immediately called an Islamophobe or Islam. I understand Islam, and I understand phobia is mental illness, but I don't understand why Islamophobia makes Islam a mental illness. This I've never really worked out yet. But what I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about what it is that you're still allowed to say about Islam without being slammed, without being called a hater, without being called something or other. What facts can you still bring to the table before you're being labeled as something or other? So the way that it works is, first I'm going to do some definitions. I'm going to introduce a video of the week, which today is it's a bit sick, actually. Then we're going to look at Misconception of the week, some news topic, and then lastly, Hadith of the week, where today the topics, I'm hoping that there are going to be some people here that are going to give us a little bit of a talk on a topic. So we look at Islam, and we look at Islam not through the eyes of a believer, not through the eyes of a Muslim, but through the eyes of a non-believer. In other words, I do not believe that ghosts exist, that dragons exist, that gods exist, that spirits exist, that souls exist. None of these things have ever made it into my brain. So I'm too much of a skeptic to allow these things to claim any area of my brain. So I am somebody who does not believe, who is suddenly labeled by theists, who are people who believe that they have a God with them somehow, somewhere, a personal God, not just a deist who believes that a universe was created and then the guy buggered off and did something else. No, these are people who believe that not only did this God create the universe and throw everything out there and then create, no, this God created them and has a personal kind of a attraction or some sort of a relationship with them. Where I said I once sent a Twitter message to, what was her name, to Paris Hilton. Yeah, do I now have a relationship with Paris Hilton because I send her a Twitter message? No. So why do these people think that by saying, hello God, here it's me, they now have a relationship with this God, which maybe doesn't even exist? At least Paris Hilton, I know, exists. But we don't know whether this God exists or these gods or whatever exist. Maybe it was a whole group of them who created the universe and life and everything that we have in it. So anyway, the point is, I'm an atheist. And I mean, this word is so stupid, but I accept it. There's no word like a racist or a philatelist or something. But, just to get the dialogue going, I accept the word atheist. Atheist, sorry. What I don't accept is atheism, because there is no ism in atheist. I don't do anything actively. I don't have a goal. There's nothing there. It's the absence of a God belief, and that is it. Therefore, I don't have this. Okay, so if I go and look at Islam as a non-believer, what happens? Well, I see the things the way that they are not meant, but the way that they are said, the way that they are written, the way the literal interpretation. No, that's exactly what I don't want to say. It's not an interpretation, but it's the literal word. This is the way that I see it. If it says there, beat your wife, then for me it says there, beat your wife. It does not mean leave your wife if it says there, beat your wife. Now, people have never managed to come up with a Quran, with a single version of a Quran. They always say, well, it's Arabic, and in Arabic words can have 50 different meanings, and therefore we need to interpret this, and here it's sort of, it means something else. It doesn't mean beat, it means something else. Now, how am I supposed to know that? Why is a God, or why should a God be that incompetent that a God would use a word which the God should know that today it is meant to say beat and not leave? Why wouldn't he say leave so that we know that it is leave and not beat? Anyway, so what else happens? Well, we see sentences like you're allowed to marry women who are not your wife's sister, your this and this and this. Then we get a whole long list. But you're allowed to marry your cousins. So you're allowed to marry a whole lot of people, but you're not allowed to marry women who are already married to another man, because this is like property. So you're not allowed to take the property of some other guy. So you're not allowed to marry married women unless they are slaves. So married slaves you can marry, which means you can have sex with them. So this is what happens if I, as a non-believer, look at Islam, and as a non-believer, I go and analyze this, I see that, hey, there's like a whole lot of sentences which are political in nature, which are not spiritual. They don't go and they help me to get into a heaven. They tell me that a woman inherits this much. The punishment for this is this. You know, a woman is a degree below the man, or the man is a degree above the woman. So these are not really spiritual things, but these are very worldly commands. How to handle slaves, how to handle captives, how to handle this, how to handle this. So this is political. So I realized, looking at Islam as a non-believer, that most of Islam is actually a political ideology. So I'm not bashing Islam, and I'm definitely not bashing Muslims. I am criticizing the contents of Islam, which says that this is a God who wants you to go to heaven. No, this is a God who wants you to live here and today according to the rules, and maybe this will get you to heaven. But first, it goes and says, here are the rules for today. Here are the rules what you need to do here and on this planet. And that is why you have, I don't know, all sorts of elements from commerce, finance, war, justice, foreign affairs, and so on and so forth. Everything part of a political ideology. So we can't say that Islam is a religion, and it is definitely not the fastest growing religion on the planet. Islam is dying. There's millions leaving every year. And it's not just a religion. It's a political ideology with a God in the middle. So that is what we are talking about. Non-believers analyzing Islam and looking at what Islam tells us, the way that the Quran is written, the way that the secondary texts are written, the way that scholars are interpreting Islam. That is what we try and show to people. Okay, that was the definitions. And now the video of the week. And this is, okay, I'll let you decide. This is titled, it's a video on YouTube, which is, can you just mute your mic because I'm getting all sorts of bangs and things. Muslim lady convinces evil Zionists to convert to Islam! Exclamation mark. And the channel's name is Muslim 74275. So people clicking on this, going to this channel, are going to get anything but Muslim Islam propaganda. It's the exact opposite. It's a satire channel. And this particular video is of a female Muslim who goes into what seems to be an office building, and she doesn't quite make it, so she stands next to a pillar, and then she moves off, and all you see that she's had a dump while standing up next to a pillar. And then people, when she walks off, people look, what is this on the floor? And all they see is a pile of shit. It's such an amazing video. How this woman, you know, because this is quite good if you are wearing the burqa or a niqab or something, nobody can see what you're doing underneath there. So you only know when she walks off. And okay, this appeals to my primitive South African humor here, but I thought this was so funny. And of course, it's a shout out for Muslim 74275, and I'll put the link in the description after the show, because this is such a hilarious channel, and the way that it's built up. Use it, or she, I don't know if it's he, she, or them. They use titles which sort of make sense to a Muslim, and then of course this is sheer satire. This is the okay. Misconception of the week is actually, I think this is brilliant, because Roshan Lewis came up with with a kind of a definition for Islam, because the misconception for me is that Islam is all about a God telling people how to go to heaven. And Roshan Lewis says Islam is basically an Arab supremacist socio-political ideology masquerading as a religion. And I like that definition so much. I'm using it. I've got it on copy paste. I've put it into a like notebook file so I can quickly find it. And I love this. Islam is basically an Arab supremacist socio-political ideology masquerading as a religion. I thought this is so funny. Okay, let's take a look at some new trends before I open up my my news page and we start some discussion on here. There's a new trend on YouTube. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Muslim cancer and Britain first and things like that. So the new trend is opening multiple channels and launching short videos with text and a Muslim-style covered woman with lots of makeup and some ridiculous, actually childish text. Because I don't know if you remember, a couple of weeks ago we talked about, or I talked about, somebody putting out, I think this was like 3 or 4 videos, all with identical text, just different pictures, and just like really stupid Islamic propaganda. And this seems to be the same person, because there's it's very primitive. It's really it's stupid if you go and look at the claims that they make. I didn't even put an example here because they're really so stupid. So it's short videos, and you will always recognize them because there's a Muslima on the front, on the thumbnail, with some text on it. So there seems to be a trend now to get more followers into the fold, who will then go and donate money. Then a young guy admits that rape and slavery may be contained in the Qur'an, but, and this is now the big but, there is a goal to this rape and this slavery. It is redemption and salvation, the saving from our corrupt £1 prostitution and lack of morality. And this is why in Islam you have all this to deter people to go into the West, into the corrupt Western lifestyle, where every woman, every female prostitutes herself for £1 a throw, and the general lack of morality. And this is why Islam comes around and stops this, because it stops cancer. And so Islam is anti-cancer. It's very easy, isn't it? Now, Britain first, and I think maybe now it's time to say bye-bye, but I was really fascinated by their propaganda, by the marketing tools that they use. Britain first is a sort of a party, a political party in the UK. I don't know if it's still UK. Do you still call it UK? If it's only Wales and England left, I don't know which. Maybe they're going to think of a Wayland, Wales, England, Wayland, or Ingles. I don't know what they're going to call themselves. So one of the guys from Britain First has been prohibited from entering, and this is quite crazy, a specific area, the city centre in Luton in the UK. And he's been prohibited from entering any mosque. So what does that tell you? Somebody on this planet is given a court order not to go somewhere. So the human rights with free movement within a city, never mind within Europe, never mind within the country, within a city, are being restricted because he's not allowed to go to the city center. If he wants to go to Luton to go to the pharmacy or something, like let's say all the pharmacies are closed and there's only one emergency pharmacy open, which is in Luton, and now he wants to go to the pharmacy. He first has to go to the police station. He has to apply for permission to go to Luton for whichever reason, and then the police can still deny him the access to the city centre in Luton. I mean, that is so stupid. Now, he's not allowed to enter any mosque. Now, what happens if he decides to become a Muslim? How does that work? Are they going to stop a Muslim from going into a mosque? I mean, Islamists are going crazy, okay? And the UK is allowing it. And then Muslims are saying, we don't want person X in the Muslim area in the UK. And the UK says, okay, we're going to stop this guy from going to the area which you Muslims claim is your area. And he's not allowed to go into any mosque regardless of the circumstances. And I think this is so hilarious. This shows how bankrupt our system is, that we are now actually pandering to Islam, and they're saying, okay, if you tell us that this person is not allowed to go into your area, we will tell this person he is not allowed to go into your area. And we will give him a court order to prohibit him. And if he does do that, he will get arrested for going into a Muslim area, i.e. Luton in the UK. And I mean, Luton is just a couple of cases, just London. And he's not allowed to go there or he will be arrested. I don't know. And this is what would actually led me into the topic today. What are you still allowed to say about Islam without being called an Islam or something, or kafir or phobist, or I don't know what? And this is so crazy. I thought this is hilarious. I need to talk about this. Okay, what I have is like a little bit of news, which I think is hilarious. Okay, here we go. Start screen share. Now I'm going to go through a couple of things. Now, I think this. Okay, I do not know what the point is of doing this. All right, I'm just presenting the news to you the way that it is presented to me. And this is now something that I saw in several places where a fatwa was issued. I mean, I think everybody knows Pokemon Go. This Pokemon Go is a game that you put on your mobile phone, and then you on your phone you will then bring up a map, and then you will see superimposed on the map little monsters, and you catch the monsters, and then you have them fight against each other, and you get points. So the idea is that you actually need to go outside to do this. You don't sit at home. You go outside and you find them. And now people are even more running around on sidewalks and places like that, staring at their phones because they might be coming.
Stop spamming. I think your audio is breaking up.
My what is?
Your audio is breaking up when you do the screen share.
My audio is breaking up.
Yes, and I need to do your correction to something you've said.
My audio is breaking up. Okay, I don't understand why.
It's not breaking up for me.
Something's breaking up, but I don't know who it is.
Okay, and there's a correction. I said something wrong?
Yes, you have. I'm reading now from Russian Times about the Christian patrols held by Britain First. Bradfordshire police have sought a High Court injunction on the 20th of this month. That's only 4 days ago. It won't be heard for another month. They are seeking to ban Britain First from all mosques and Luton because they are a Christian group causing trouble by holding Christian provocative rallies in Muslim areas where they congregate. They're not saying it the way that you're saying it, in other words.
I wasn't talking about Britain First. I was talking about one person.
Well, be that as it may, that one person and Britain First, it hasn't come to court. So that's the correction. seeking to
Okay, well,
collect.
he has a court order, and
They
he
have
showed the court order. The court order
the court
was on
order.
screen.
The court order is saying it will be heard in a month. The actual
Maybe
trial.
for Britain first, but this person already received it. He has already been banned. This is what I got. Look, I'm just telling you the way that it was conveyed. If the guy said something wrong and I'm conveying it wrong, that may very well be. I don't know if these are two separate instances. I do not know if this is the same thing. I have no idea.
But I'll be honest, in England that sort of thing goes on all the time. I've been banned from my town centre.
Well, I think that's totally
Understandable,
this
I know.
is scandalous.
But that's what our country can do. It can ban anybody it likes for whatever reason it seems as important. And I got banned from my area because I was holding rock concerts, and they didn't like it because they were free and they were in competition with the council-run rock concerts. This was when I was a teenager. My other brother has been banned from Southend because they drove a car into the estuary and he got stuck. So he was banned from Southend. So, you know, the police can ban people for spurious reasons, and this is just another case of you caused us problems, we're going to lash out at you.
I've never
I
heard of this. I've never heard of a city being
for hosting free rock concerts.
Oh,
That
it
is
happens.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard of a city being able to ban an individual from entering the city centre. I've never heard of that. I think
No,
it's
yes,
hilarious. I
it
think
was a
it's
whole group of
scandalous. I don't think it should be something that
Yeah, but it happens. That's England. That's England.
amazing. Okay, so let me go back to Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go is this thing where you collect these little monsters on your TV, on your phone screen, and
Correction.
of course
Little Jinn.
little gins, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, a fatwa has been issued that prohibits this for good Muslims, because a good Muslim is not allowed to capture jinns. This site here, because there were several sites all explaining the fatwa number 21758, but this one is especially good because there was a fatwa issued in 2001 against the original Pokemon, and this one is now against the Pokemon Go. So there was a previous fatwa against the Pokemon in 2001 because of the symbols, where they said it encouraged blasphemy and gambling because the card symbols included the Star of David, triangles, and crosses. So the cards are promoting Zionism, Freemasonry, and Christianity, which means it's banned by Islam. It contains devious Masonic-like symbols and promotes forbidden images.
I've heard Merkel is extremely upset about that because Muslims, she wanted to collect them all.
Anyway, this is crazy. Then the game is considered gambling. I don't know what is gambling about this. Okay, what they do is the third thing is the fatwa claims the game is problematic because it promotes evolution. So the Saudi Arabian Council of Scholars is upset with Pokemon Go because they evolve. And the theory of evolution is a main element, and one of the most important things that makes man condemn this game is adopting the theory of evolution developed by Darwin. This is why, because they evolve, it's un-Islamic. They don't understand evolution. This theory states that all species of organisms evolve and that the origin of man was an ape. Astonishingly, the children frequently use the word evolution inside and outside the game. You can hear them saying that this creature contained in the card has evolved from another form or to another form. And that is why it is prohibited for Muslims, because it contains the word evolve, and they show that they are so stupid they don't even understand what evolution is. But they prohibit it because even they don't understand it, it's bad for you. A fatwa is a finding of Islamic law. Okay, it's not an edict, and you don't need to adhere to it or anything. So they just explain what a fatwa is, and then come on, it's as anything else. It is popular in the Middle East because they are quick to, to pick up trends and things like that, just like everybody else is. So, it's popular everywhere, and now it's been outlawed in the Islamic world for various stupid reasons.
I saw an article. I don't know if the translation was correct, but just to add to what you've said there, they were suggesting because it was on an iPhone that Apple had the ability to view your house as you was playing the game. So it could also be used by a spy network. I
Yes.
I don't know if the translation's correct, but in the fatwa, when the scholar was revealing the reasons why they hated it, wanted it banned, that was also added there because it could be used as a camera to spy on them.
This is true. I think they mentioned this in this. This is an article from the Telegraph, okay, and this is a little bit more involved. So I used the other one first, and they explained that it was. I think this is actually where they also mentioned this with the spying. Now I'm not going to read through all. It is hilarious. It is childish. It is stupid. It's amazingly bizarre.
It's hilarious that the Kaaba in Mecca is a Pokemon gym.
Maybe there is a Pokemon outside the Kaaba which only Muslims can go and capture. Oh, goodness. Yeah, exactly. Muhammadan. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, Muhammad, not Don.
Muhammad.
But
Well,
maybe
maybe
that's
there will be an Islam version which only contains halal figures like Aisha and things like that. Okay, now next we come to, well, I think it's a very, very serious topic, and that is what is happening in Turkey. Like the GovUK site is telling people to take care when traveling to Turkey. They have released a map which shows some restrictions. Let me quickly zoom into this to make it a little bit bigger. So you can see that on the whole west side and everything is okay, but the east is problematic, where they advise against all travel due to the proximity of Syria and Iraq, of course, and most of all due to the Kurdish regions. Does it have Erzurum? Yeah, because there in Erzurum, on the east side, I was nearly killed in a car crash, like many years ago. Anyway, so what is happening in Turkey? What is the big deal in Turkey now? What is happening now? Why are there so many conspiracy theories? Is Erdogan going to be the next sultan? Is he a dictator? Are we watching a dictator in the making? Are the 3,000 people he sacked really only the ones who, or the only people who were against Erdogan? So I think there's more questions than statements. And it's going to be very interesting to find out the reactions of people. What I find odd is the reaction by governments, where they are saying, well, we are still talking to Turkey about joining the EU, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. How anybody can still talk about this. They're saying only if Turkey goes and reinstalls the death penalty are we going to stop all negotiations. No, they should stop right now.
I'm reading something just from the Wall Street Journal. It kind of sums up Erdogan quite well. It was written on July 22nd. It's about him reciting a poem, which I'll say now is, "Our minarets are our bayonets, our domes are our helmets, our mosques are our barracks." And he...
but that's old.
My reference is Islam. If I am not able to speak of this, what is the use of living?
But this is old. This goes... I can't remember who said this.
Erdogan.
Erdogan, yes, but
he was in prison, was banned from politics for life for reciting that poem.
Or somebody like that. I can't remember who said this. This is one of the old philosophers 1,000 years ago.
And if he's got that sort of message in his heart, if that's what he really believes in, this guy can't go into the EU.
Well, yeah, everybody knows that except the politicians of the EU. They're still talking about negotiations. I don't understand what the negotiation is.
No, I guess they're only negotiating him with him because he's held back a lot of these refugees. So since they've been talking to him, the inflow of refugees has reduced. So I guess there's some way to please him so that he keeps more of the refugees. Because if they don't, he's just going to open the floodgates again.
Yeah, I agree with you, but that is blackmail.
Yeah, that's what he's been doing with his own people. So I guess he won't hesitate doing it with the European Union.
Well, our former Prime Minister wanted Turkey to join the EU when he first became leader of the opposition. He's always wanted Turkey to be part of the EU. He wanted to fast track them in. I can only assume it's because cheap workers and places to sell cheap goods. It's a capitalist dream. It's why Germany wanted Greece and Italy and Spain to join the EU, even though they weren't economically as strong as Germany and France. It strengthened their euro and made Germany stronger financially.
Okay, this I can't comment on. I'm just looking at what is happening in Turkey, and it worries the shit out of me because this is crazy. I mean, what Atatürk did 100 years ago, was brilliant.
That's the worrying thing.
Sorry, you were talking now while I was talking. I couldn't hear you.
He's got a lot of support. That's the worrying thing. If he was just a dictator and he didn't have much support, but he was forcing his way, probably we wouldn't have much of a problem because you might have another Egypt and he might get overthrown. But it seems to me he's doing this purge, but he's got a massive support behind him. They want him.
Well, he's a dictator who says if you are with me, then nothing's going to happen to you, and you're good. I mean, we've seen that, like I said last time, we saw that happen 100 years ago, and we saw what happened then.
So we got Turkey's got problems.
The thing about Erdogan is he's not even trying to hide it. After the coup, he actually banned academics from leaving the country.
Yeah.
Academics, teachers. The man is not even trying to hide it.
Well, he removed 3,000 people.
It's absolutely amazing.
And nobody is saying anything. This is what I try to point out. This is why I don't understand why we are still negotiating with this lunatic. And we are watching calmly how he is taking care of things. Now, in Iran, the Kurdish party, just on a side note, because Erdogan is shit scared of the Kurds. And he says he does not want them to have their state. He does not want them to have their region. He does not want them to have any say in anything anything in Turkey. So he's trying to kill them, and now the Iran's Kurdish party is saying, listen, we are now sufficiently agitated by the whole situation that we are between a rock and a hard place, between Turkey and Iran. Nobody's giving us the time of the day, so we are now taking up arms again. So they said the armed action was being it was dormant, and now it is being resumed. So they are sort of waking up the armed struggle for their independence. So I don't know. Does every group now get their own country? I don't understand. And why people are so shit scared of the Kurds, I do not know. I don't know.
I don't
think
know
the phrase Game of Thrones should actually be applied to politics, because that's exactly what it is. I mean, like, stop you saying, I don't know why Europe is still negotiating with him, because there's a massive influx of immigration. Yeah, they want to condemn what's going on in Turkey, but if they do that, it'll have repercussions. Erdogan might say, you know what, fuck it, take over jihadists, things like that.
It's the opposite.
And it just reminds me of Cersei Lannister. When you play the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. I genuinely think Game of Thrones should be like an actual political term.
But the way that it works is if Turkey is part of Europe, then anybody from Turkey can move freely inside of Europe. So you're doing the opposite of what you're trying to do, and that is keep the refugees out by having Turkey join Europe.
I don't think Erdogan actually wants to be in Europe, though. I mean, like last time I was on the show, I mentioned that the Prime Minister of Turkey had commented on Brexit and said that was like the first domino in Europe's fall, and it basically said, fuck it, we don't even want to be there now. Erdogan is, I'd seriously doubt he would have said that without Erdogan's approval. And
He
like
just wants
Erdogan is
money.
now saying, oh, let's bring back the death penalty. Why shouldn't we do it? It's only in Europe that they don't do it. And I don't think he gives a shit. I really don't think he does. So long as he can secure that it will be easier for Turks to actually travel through Europe, which is trying to negotiate as part of the deal for him to keep housing refugees.
I think you have
No,
to look
he
back
wants to
further.
have his cake and eat it too. He gets the benefits of travel, he gets the popularity, and he gets to implement his own Ottoman Empire style rules without being handicapped by European human rights laws.
I think you have to look back further into Aragon's political career to understand his motivations. You're looking at a man who picked up a country which was in vast economic debt, and he has used the EU and capitalism to bolster up his country and literally pay off all that debt. Many economics consider Aragon to be a genius as far as political manoeuvring and running his country back into the state it is now. And
Like I said, he wants to have his cake and eat it too.
but he's also a religious lunatic. It's like that old saying about the fine line of genius is madness. He's always on the other side, and I think he's showing his mental side now. He's crazy.
Frank, you wanted to say something?
Yep. So I was okay. If we reach a scenario, I wanted a consensus from this group. Like, what if Europe says okay, no to Erdogan, and he opens the floodgates again? So how many of you would be in support of lethal action against these people? Like, if they refuse to stop sending their boats, the Coast Guard will use force.
Can you
Because
increase Frank's volume because I can barely hear him?
I did.
can you hear? Can
Yeah, I
you
can
hear
hear
me?
you.
Now,
Yeah,
yes,
that's
because
better.
I put your volume on max.
Yeah. So I was wondering if he opens the floodgates, Europe says no to Erdogan, and he opens the floodgate again. Uh, how many of you would agree to a consensus that you might have to use lethal action against these people fleeing? Or it's very harsh, I know, but how do you deter them if not lethal action? You will have to keep accepting more and more refugees. So I guess that's why the Erdogan is taking that to his advantage. And
Well, the problem they have is where are they going to send them? Now, they can't stop them getting into Greece. I'm afraid it's impossible. They land on the shores, they're stuck there because Greece and the rest of the EU just haven't got somewhere to send them. If they had somewhere to send them, they could just put them on a boat and do what Australia did, send them to this mythical island that Spam talks about, and dump them there and then process them. But they can't. They can't send them to Egypt because they've got political turmoil. They can't send them to any of North Africa because the whole of North Africa is basically in turmoil. They can't send them anywhere in the Middle East because that's all in a state of war and turmoil. Where are they going to send them? America?
Didn't they send them to like a number of North African countries? I think I remember something about how Jordan took so many, they had to close the doors. Because it took so many, they literally could not take more.
Yes, that's true.
And I know it wasn't just Jordan, but Jordan's the only one that I can remember by name off the top of my head.
Jordan did it, and the Gulf states didn't even bother to take one.
I know the
Because
Gulf
they
states didn't, but I'm pretty sure you're wrong about North Africa.
Well, I can't think of any. No. You look at North Africa. You got Egypt, you got Iran, you got Tunisia, you got what's the place at the end? Algeria. Not one of those countries is not having a civil problem at the moment. The Algerians are having problems with the French. The Libyans are having an internal civil war. They're split right down the middle, and you've got ISIS cropping up there now. You've got Turkey with its political problems.
Yeah, but it wasn't just Jordan, though, was it?
No, it wasn't just Jordan. All of the surrounding countries of Syria and Iraq stated they were having problems with too many migrants, except for Iran. I don't think they ever said anything, and Russia refused to take anybody in the first place. They just ferried them through to the north of Russia. They left a pathway for people to travel along, so they ended up going into Norway, I think it was, by bicycle, if I remember right, because they've got a current bicycle problem in Norway, where thousands of refugees have just piled their bikes there after they've got into the new lands.
They crossed through Serbia, didn't they?
Yeah, it was all, they were just funneling them through.
Mm.
Okay, there's in the chat somebody's saying that if Turkey joined the EU, then the EU rules and regulations could force Turkey to keep the people inside the country. I don't think so. I don't think that the people, I mean, there are people who stayed in Austria, then they stayed in Germany, and then they went to Sweden, I think. They said Sweden was the best, and this is why we did not stay in Austria and Germany. So I don't think you can force people to stay in a particular country. I think then once they're in the Schengen area, they can move freely.
They can move freely even if they're not in the Schengen area, as long as they're part of the European community. But as far as
then you have borders. The Schengen area is where you don't have borders.
If they're not in the Schengen area, then how can they move freely without a passport?
No, you need to be in the Schengen area.
I know, because I mean, like England, even before, well, we're still in the EU. We haven't triggered Article 50. I couldn't just move freely through Europe until I got to the Schengen area, and I can't get to the Schengen area without going through customs and showing a passport.
I have. I've travelled from England all the way over to Italy, and not once had I had to show my passport. The only time I was asked to show my passport, I said, well, I'm sorry, mate, it's in the back of me bags and the bike. And the guy said, oh, you sound English, pass on through.
Yeah, they can do that.
You see...
Okay, let's carry on with the...
It's the Freedom of Movement Act. The Schengen area is different to the Freedom of Movement Act. They're two different things. The Schengen area just said, let's get rid of the border guards, where you can have to show your passport. And that meant both Europeans and non-Europeans had to show their passports. The free movement of people means that if you've got a European passport, I can go to any country in the European community, and you can't throw me out. Look, when I got my job as a nurse, I had to do qualifications that stated that my qualifications were absolutely valid anywhere in the European community, and I could not be denied a job because of my qualifications being different. But for a country like America, my qualification would not be legal. I would have to do an American course of nursing to work there. And the same would apply to other places in the world.
Freedom of movement is that you can go and work without any additional permits or papers or anything. It does not mean that your qualifications are automatically valid. The Schengen area is just an area where there are no internal controls. To enter the Schengen area, you need a passport, but then once you are inside, you don't need any further passport controls or border checks or something like that. They can put them in if there's a state of emergency, like France did, like Belgium did. So then you have border controls again.
Yeah, what is going on with France at the moment? That's something I've...
Okay, we're talking about Iran's Kurdish party and what that means for Turkey if the Kurds in Iran are going to get weapons again, if they are going to resume armed action. What does it mean for Turkey? So this was another, I don't know.
Is this why they're not talking about the Mad Axeman or the Mad, the kid with the 300 bullets? Because they didn't say he was a Muslim, they didn't say he was Iranian, they didn't say he was a part of a terrorist movement, but his parents apparently were refugees from Iran.
Well, his story apparently had nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism. It wasn't political motives. It was basically a kid who was bullied severely for 7 years, had poor social skills, not many mates, and then he just had enough and said, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to kill him. Everyone that's ever hurt me, I'm going to kill them all. And I think he actually said that. Like one time, there was someone actually online who said, like, holy shit, I used to go to school with this kid. We used to bully the shit out of him. And he said it, and this bloke is just like, I actually remember one time we were picking on him, and he said, like, I'm going to kill you one day.
So why exactly are we talking about this?
Because
because GPZ brought it up, and I'm saying, yeah, he's Iranian German, but it's not. It's very easy not to class it as a terrorist attack. A terrorist attack by definition not only is there to spread terror, but also for political motivations. This wasn't political. It was a fucked up, bullied kid.
Yeah, I can understand a bully kid doing this, but likely, I can also think, was he an Iranian Kurd who's... But he's not.
I think he was one of those people with just are told that they're not German.
Yeah,
because that was one of the things, wasn't it? Like he was like he got in a screaming match with a native German, and he was like, fuck you, I'm German. Like they called him a fucking foreigner, and he's like, fuck you, I'm German. I was born here. And
okay, can we stop talking about this then?
Notorious for not saying that you're not German if you're not native, even if you were born and raised here. Whereas I think we've done a much better job in the UK. White or non-white, you can call yourself British. We have done a better job than that. But I just saw in the chat breaking news. There's been another attack in Germany, a machete attack, and I've just gone onto a news site. And Syrian refugee 21 hacks pregnant woman to death and injures 2 others in random machete attack on innocent strangers walking down a city street. And this was in western city of Rettlingen near Stuttgart. I have no idea where that is.
Well, you're hearing it first, stop spamming. Are we going to be looking at a form of Kurdish rebellion? And will it spill out into Europe? That's what seems to happen with these Middle Eastern countries. They've got some kind of feud going on, and the next thing we know, it's happening in our streets. It's got nothing.
Oh, that reminds me of last year when Andy Chowdhury and his band of merry men were, walking down the streets, pissing off Kurds, and then there was like a small mini riot with like Kurds versus Andy and friends.
Is he in jail yet? Because he hasn't been. I haven't heard a word about him for about.
No, he's still in prison. But was it today or yesterday? There was a British military man who was having a jog, and 2 Middle Eastern men tried to get him in a car at knife point.
Oh gosh, yeah, that was up in the Air Force Base.
Was that today or yesterday that happened?
I think it was Friday.
Oh, was it Friday? I thought it was Saturday or Sunday.
I know.
But yeah, like the two blokes trying to get him to a car at knife point. He punches one of them, knocks him to the ground, and his mate just helps him up and runs to the car.
Yeah, and there's been absolutely minimal coverage over what that was about.
Well, there's minimal coverage because we don't actually know the motivation yet, and what gets more views? A nice good massacre, or 2 blokes tried to kidnap someone, he punches one of them, and they both run off. It's not as interesting a story.
Soldier.
Okay. Are we done with the violence news channel now?
Pardon?
Are we done with the violence news channel?
Hey, you brought it up.
I did not bring anything up.
Stop when you do a show about Islam today. It's always the violence news channel.
Yeah, but I'm talking about Iran. I'm talking about Turkey.
Yeah, Turkey's next to Qur'an. Next to Iran.
Is it next to
I definitely think though, like
the Kurds.
Okay, can we
talk
continue?
about Kurds? I definitely think when that military coup did happen in Turkey, I wasn't even surprised. I've been thinking to myself every single time Erdogan does something new or opens his mouth, I just read the paper, shake my head, and think Turkey's going to end up in a civil war soon.
Do you think it was like what they did in the Reichstag? It was Hitler actually planning the overthrow of the German government.
Come on, let's stop spamming Finn.
Yeah, but we're talking about Turkey now.
I know.
He wants to finish
We're
it.
doing what he wants. Do you think it
Can't
was?
you have this debate when he's finished? He clearly wants to continue, okay?
Okay, the point that I was trying to make with Turkey, and I agree with Raven on this one, that Turkey is going to go to a shambles pretty soon, because what happened is a couple of centuries, no, not centuries, decades ago, there was a guy who was the friend of Erdogan who taught him everything about Islam, and Erdogan is now using all this information for his own power, I don't know what games that he's playing in Turkey at the moment. Now, what he's done is he's told his old friend, Mr. Fethullah Gulen, to go and fuck off because he was afraid of him. Because he thought, I'm not going to share power with this guy. I want the power for myself. He's taught me everything I know about Islam. I know how to use Islam to my benefit. And now I'm going to tell Mr. Gulen to go and make himself scarce. So Gulen is now, who went into exile into the US. He's living in a small apartment somewhere in some city. And Gulen is now being accused by Erdogan of being at the heart of this coup. He says that the Turkish people should now go and look for Gulen supporters everywhere on the planet and try and eliminate them, because he suspects that Gulen is the one who, he is accusing Gulen of being part of this entire coup, at the center of it, which is ridiculous.
Well, he's cut off the American supply of electricity for their Air Force base and said if they don't hand him over, the United States hands over this character, he won't restore their power. The unfortunate thing is the Americans have nuclear weapons at this base, so there's a bit of a problem going on diplomatically.
So this is quite strange. That Erdogan is now accusing his old buddy of doing something that he obviously can't be doing, because he's sitting in some small place, and handing him over. I don't think the United States are going to do anything of the sort. I mean, what is Erdogan going to do with his old friend? What is the point?
Well, they might hand him over. It wouldn't be the first time the Americans have slipped people over the border.
Anyway, I think this is hilarious, and I think this is a little bit stupid what kind of a game they're playing here. I think this is ridiculous. So let us go away from Turkey and let's look at what else is happening in Kabul once again. And this is so sick, really, that there was, I mean, come on, people were in the street, and this was a march and detonated themselves. This is
your audio is packing up.
What is packing up?
Your audio.
My audio is packing up again.
Well, I was hearing every other word you were saying. That sort of audio problem.
Strange. Okay, maybe I was pulling the microphone out somehow. Okay, so this was a blast in Kabul where they went into a march and detonated themselves, killing as many people as possible. But of course, this has nothing to do with Islam. Now, in Iraq, Daesh is being pushed back. And one of the cities
is it the Islamic State, or is it the Afghan version of Islamic State? Because their politics are rather getting mixed up now because of their moving into different countries. When I think of Islamic State, I think of Syria, Iran, and al-Baghdadi and his army. But when I think of the Taliban versus the Islamic State party that's there, they've got completely different political motivations and vengeances against Pakistan.
I don't. I'm kind of wondering who Brazilian Islamists are so pissed off at. Like, was a jihadi group in Rio that pledged to the Islamic State, wasn't there?
Yeah, because of the Olympics.
It's a very weird thing.
That is going to be one catastrophe, let me tell you. Anyway, so here what is happening is this is in Iraq, and the people from Daesh are being told, listen, we are going to attack this city, okay? Now, just as we've done in Mosul, and so on and so on, you are going to get killed, and this little city of Manbij is going to be taken over. So what we're giving you now is a notice that we're going to do this in a couple of days. So why don't you leave now that you are alive, or we're going to come and kill you. And Daesh said, well, no, fuck you, we're going to stay. So I don't understand. They're being told that they're going to be attacked. They're being told that they're going to get killed. And they will just ignore this and say, Okay, that's fine. Come and kill us. We're going to be martyrs, and we're just going to go and die for absolutely.
They want to see the 72 virgins. That's all.
Yeah, probably. If somebody didn't understand this, they're after the 72 virgins. Okay. Oh, sorry. Was that it?
Well, I've actually just to add on that, I've actually seen some scholars popping up every now and then, which keep saying it's a mistranslation, and you're actually going to get 72 reasons.
No.
That's only
Yeah,
Irshad
that's
Manji.
yeah.
That's only Irshad Manji.
No.
Nobody else agrees with that.
There's
I know no one believes it. It's just
I
kind
can
of
go through that.
this
funny.
is different. There is a guy who has studied different Middle East languages, amongst which is ancient Arabic and Aramaic and Syriac. And he says if you take certain words of the Quran, the guy writes under a pen name of Christoph Luxemburg. And this Christoph Luxemburg, in his book, says the Syriac way of reading the Quran, then the words that you see there make more sense. Like I've brought this example a couple of times. Like, for example, Maria is in a sorry state, and it says in the Quran, look at your ass, look at your donkey, sorry. That doesn't make sense. But if you read it in the Syro-Aramaic, in the Syriac language, then it becomes look at your condition, and then it makes a lot more sense. And he says the 72 virgins that are being mentioned are not actually virgins, but tiny grapes.
I almost wish Islam was true. I almost wish it was true, just so they actually get to Janet, and like they're like, okay, here's your 72 grapes.
Well, this is why Satan Atheist made the whole video, which was so hilarious. Now you've convinced me. Now that I get all these girls, now I'm going to be a Muslim.
But look, I mean, that is not in the current Arabic language. That is just some hypothesis that.
Exactly.
Because if you read it in, I mean, Horonain it's real Arabic words, and they don't mean grapes.
Well, and it doesn't. But he says if you read it in using those words, it doesn't make sense. But if you substitute those words for Syriac, then it makes sense.
The problem with that is because there are several. I'm a bit skeptical of that theory, because then they would have to, they are mentioning these celestial nymphs in different ways and using very different words and describing them in different ways. So I'm a bit skeptical. But
well,
maybe.
Everybody is skeptical about this because the point is you don't know which words to read from what language. Just because there's a similarity in another language doesn't automatically mean you now have to take the word. It's just that what he has done is he's shown an alternative. That's all he says. He says there is an alternative. It is because there are a lot of loan words in the Quran.
But alternative to what?
Alternatives for because you know when it describes the houris, and I always get amused with the fact they're actually called houris. That always amuses me. But is there any alternate translation for when it describes them as see-through?
No.
They're so transparent. You can actually see their bone marrow.
Raven, it's not a translation. He says this is the Arabic word that is intended to be used here. He says the alternative to what the Quran says, where the standard interpretation is X. He says if you use a different word, it can also mean Y, but we don't know which version or which language or what word is actually the intended usage here.
I mean, there are other, like, for example, وَكَوَائِبَ أَتْرَابَ, for example, is another, like, 2 words or 3 words that are explaining these celestial nymphs. So, what words were that from, if that's from Aramaic?
Exactly. You don't know. And this is why he's saying, all I'm doing is I'm showing an alternative way of interpreting the words if they are not taken from ancient Arabic, but they are taken from Aramaic or Syriac or whatever. So this is the whole point. So can we stop talking about the 72 virgins now?
They're actually white raisins, according to Wiki.
Not raisins, grapes. Raisins are dried up fruit. Here we're talking about shiny grapes. Because
So the grapes are so see-through you can see the bone marrow. Does that just mean see? I don't know what you'd say. Just you'd see through it.
now the thing is that
That's
these
Aaron.
were rare. It was very difficult to
You
grow
can see
grapes
through
in the
white grapes.
desert.
The thing is, aren't they supposed to grow a new growth? Because every time you have sex with one of these raisins or women, or virgins, they're supposed to become a virgin straight away after the intercourse.
No, you have rivers of wine. Okay, you
Oh,
have rivers of
maybe-
wine. You have all sorts of things in paradise because
Maybe what
paradise
happens
is
is you have
supposed to be
sex with her
something
and she gives
special.
birth to grapes.
Because, hang on, are you talking now?
I was just saying, maybe you have sex with her and she gives birth to grapes.
No, that's not the point. The point is that you go to heaven, and heaven is supposed to be something special. And what is special in the Arabian desert? Water. So you have rivers of water, of milk, of wine. You have rivers of wine.
I thought
What else is
the
very
sea
rare in
camel.
the Arabian desert? Grapes are very rare, and things like that. So this is why what is special in heaven is rivers of wine and grapes.
Doesn't a she camel drink all the water so it becomes milk? That's the she camel. It drinks the water and turns it into milk.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, it was one of the polemics when Muhammad was still alive. He countered him by saying that the she camel was a load of rubbish because it would turn all the water to milk.
Brilliant. Okay, so now that was in heaven, and this is the 72 virgins because in heaven it was supposed to be something.
Reasons.
Okay, let's. The last item is that there were some rebels in Syria. We said that a boy made a mistake, and therefore they had to behead the boy because the boy made a mistake. And this is now the latest video footage that you see here, where a video has emerged of Syrian rebels beheading a young boy.
Well, they said he was a spy, didn't they?
Yeah. And that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Because everybody says, we don't know this boy. The boy says, I do not know what you are talking about. So they have no clue what they are doing. It seems they're running out of hostages that they can behead. They're running out of people that they can use for their propaganda videos. So they go and they take little boys and say, well, you are a spy and we are now going to kill you, and that's it.
In Newcastle, they hanged a monkey for being a spy, didn't they?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it's quite understandable. These mistakes happen.
So there you go. This is the last piece of news that I have on this one. Now, hang on, where was I? Wasn't there another one? What did I have here? Ah, no, this one is still there. I mean, I don't know if people remember that there used to be a war. Okay, Israel, when it was started, immediately, like 3 days later, the Arabic countries attacked Israel because they didn't like that the Jews were there. Ever since then, there have been wars. Then we had different wars with Egypt, with Lebanon, with all sorts of countries. And now, 10 years after the last one, Israel says the next one is going to be worse. And this is now, I think this is the last warning, where it's, number one, it's what you would call it, the Gaza Strip, and then you have Lebanon starting to throw rockets into Israel. And Israel is saying, listen, we're not going to take this much longer. The thing is, they are terrible at marketing. They should hire the people from Britain first to do the marketing for them, or me for that matter. I would have a marketing campaign for them that would really be brilliant, but they don't want to do that. So this is quite... If they would show every single incident, because what is quite interesting, there was a guy on the space station who came around, and then he was taking a video, and he saw that there were flashes in the night, and he didn't really know what they were. And he found out that he was filming the rockets being fired, the anti, what is it called, the hard shield or some Operation Shield or something, where Israel is firing rockets at all the rockets being fired from Gaza.
Dome.
What is it called?
The Iron Dome.
Iron Dome.
The Iron Dome. There you go. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm getting old. My memory is not what it used to be. So
What did Captain America say about it?
nothing.
Oh, so it's a
Actually,
secret shield thing. Cap doesn't know.
I'm reading about what Captain America says, and I'll tell you after Spot Fleming finishes.
Yeah, please.
I just have to
This is my
comment on
last
the
one.
fact
This is my last one. Thank you very much for your attention. Everything. I'm just saying, this is just an item that we need to watch. The same, along with Turkey, this one is going to escalate because I can see that they're running out of options, and now with Iran coming back into the picture, they are thinking that they are going to be at the wrong end of the pineapple, and this is going to be a dire situation. So there you go.
Right.
Is it official shield or is it like some Hydro branch?
It's a missile shield. It's a computer system that targets incoming missiles from outside of Israel and shoots them down with American missiles.
Hmm. You'd think after the attack in New York we'd be more worried about aliens.
Ah, well, can I get on to New York? Because Donald Trump 4 hours ago said something. He says he wants to increase his proposed ban on Muslim immigration to the United States. Yes.
Okay. And he wants to from France and Germany, right? He mentioned France and because he wanted to increase it also to countries that supposedly have a.
The First Amendment does not apply to Muslims.
He wants to increase it to countries that have what he calls a terrorism problem, an influx of terrorism, and he mentioned France and Germany as going through more checks. And he said, I think he said that Brexit happened because the British wanted to get away from all that.
It's more or less true.
Raven, you wanted to talk about Sharia and Theresa May. Have you had an opportunity to look into this?
I have.
Do you want to tell us something about it, just for a couple of minutes?
I don't know. I'm more just before I do that, I just like, you know, if Donald Trump actually does become president, what I want him to do is first night in the Oval Office. I think what Donald Trump should do is that night walk out into the gardens of the White House, dig a hole in the soil, take his clothes off, lie down on the grass, put his dick in the hole, and literally fuck the world.
Will that get him the 72 virgins?
What?
I think that would be a fantastic thing to do for his first night. Anyway, so there's a gentleman in the UK called Mr. Azid. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Chai Wala. So I think it's Chaiwala. I'm not sure, but he's publicly trying to lead this campaign in the UK to revive polygamy. He's created 2 online dating sites, one for Muslims and one for non-Muslims. And not only is he trying to make money from this, but in a surprisingly effective publicity campaign, he talks about wanting to remove the local taboo of polygamy and bigamy and spread understanding of the benefits of wife collecting. And he just says, what I'm offering is a man with many wives. Although he only has one wife himself, and he says he's quite picky. And the interesting thing is that Chaiwala, if that's how you pronounce it, has actually said himself of the benefits of mixed for women. He actually said, quote, "There is not a woman on earth who will be totally comfortable with it. Even the Prophet Muhammad's wives showed signs of jealousy." And, you know, more recently, female endorsements for polygamy remain rather thin on the ground. I mean, from Saudi, from Aragon's Turkey, Egypt, Libya, where would-be polygamists no longer need consent from their first wife. It's just not something that's very likely of us. But on a biological level, he said he's found that the arrangement is better suited than monogamy to anyone sharing his fairly essentialist view of the sexes. He said that men are more sexually oriented, and that women are more emotional and caring and nurturing, and pretty much all the usual tropes. There was a comment by a woman named Catherine Bennett on this, who said that the attractions sound almost limitless. Imagine if you are a man, not being reliant on one wife for the efficient multiplication of your genes, but on a battalion, young, old, tall, short, chatty, tactium, good at cooking, great at scrubbing floors, whatever, and without even having to start an extreme religious cult in Utah to reap the benefits. When, as so often happens, one wife starts to get a bit threadbare or negative, you simply pick another with a bit more joie de vivre, though frugal, to a maximum of 4. And although he only has one wife at present, Mr. Chaiwala does plan to get a second wife quite soon. Although before you can apply, ladies, bear in mind, he is quite picky. This actually comes in the case of a whitewashing of Sharia councils in the UK, which has been which Theresa May has been accused of. In an open letter to Theresa May, hundreds of women's human rights organisations and campaigners warn against a further slide towards privatised justice and parallel legal systems. In the open letter, I won't mention the individuals because it's a long list of individuals, but for the organisations, it's been signed by the director of the Iranian Kurdish Women's Rights Organisation in the UK. It's been signed by Elia Mania, the academic and author of Women and Sharia Law, The Impact of Legal Pluralism in the UK from Switzerland, Gina Khan, Women's Rights Campaigner in the UK, Gilta Shabgal, Director of the Centre for Secular Space in the UK, Mariam Nawazi, spokesperson of One Law for All and co-founder of the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain, Nazreen Rehman, co-founder and chair of British Muslims for Secular Democracy, UK, Pragnina Patel, director of Southall Black Sisters, UK, Raihana Sultan, spokesperson of Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain, UK, and Yasmin Rehman, Centre for Secular Space board member, UK. And just UK-based, but organisations that have signed this is Women in Black, which is a London organisation, the Ashiana Network, British Arabs for Universal Women's Rights, Centre for Secular Space, Community Women's Blog, Council of Ex-Muslims, Coventry Women's Voices, Cultural Project, the Director of the Greater Manchester Immigration Act Unit, the Chief Officer of Coventry Rape and Sexual Abuse Centre, and co-chair of Rape Crisis England and Wales, UK, the case manager of the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain, the End Violence Against Women Coalition, Equal Rights Now, Organisation Against Women's Discrimination in Iran, UK, European College of Law, UK, Federation of Iranian Refugees, UK, HITNA, Movement of Women's Liberation, UK, Ghana Saeed, Director of Kurdish Secular Centre, UK. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And these aren't even, I'm looking at so much of them right now, and these aren't even global. These are just UK based. Now, the open letter itself says that it just mentions that how in 2015 the UK government announced that it would hold an independent inquiry into the operation of Sharia councils in the UK. Predictably, some dismissed the move as yet another example of Muslim bashing and Islamophobia because it was located within the state's counter-extremism strategy. But, you know, the people who welcomed the inquiry, my cigarette's gone out, precisely because it provided a vital and rare opportunity for the state to examine the resurgence of religious fundamentalism and extremism, particularly within black and minority communities in the UK, and its impact on gender equality and justice. And, you know, for so many years, people, particularly women in these communities, have been at the forefront of challenging minority religious fundamentalism and conservative forces, particularly Islamists, who want to legitimize the role of religion in the legal system. These people have opposed the slow but insidious drip effect of a fundamentalist agenda that seeks to communalize law and social policy, particularly in relation to women and family matters, bearing fruit in developments such as gender-segregated seating in universities and the Law Society's promulgation of Sharia-compliant legal guidance on inheritance. I should actually mention, when the Law Society were actually talking about making legal Sharia-compliant, legally binding wills, a number of solicitors and lawyers in the UK, particularly secular ones, completely rejected this. There was a fantastic letter from a secular lawyer talking about how it goes completely against what we would consider to be fair and right, how not only women but also children from outside of marriage, would be affected. And I really should actually try and find a link to that. But anyway, so they've warned against those who tout Sharia or religious personal laws as alternative and authentic forms of community meditation and governance, a profoundly regressive idea that has increasingly gained traction in this age of austerity and the state's retreat from its promise to look after its citizens. The people behind this had hoped and understood that the inquiry into these alarming developments that are conveniently, very conveniently ignored by some civil rights campaigners who decry state but not fundamentalist abuse of power would be truly independent. However, they are now dismayed to learn that far from examining the key connections between religious fundamentalism and women's rights, the narrow remit of inquiry will render it basically a whitewash, and instead of human rights experts and campaigners, it will be chaired and advised by theologians. The danger is that the inquiry is setting out with a predetermined objective that will approve the expansion of the role of Sharia and religious operation forms and their jurisdiction over family matters, again, particularly in minority communities, I bet, with a little tweaking to make it more parallel to the state. Those people who work with abused and vulnerable women, largely from Muslim and other religious backgrounds, are absolutely alarmed by the prospect of a further slide towards privatized justice and parallel legal systems in the UK. We know that in such systems, vulnerable women and children will be even more removed from the protection of the rule of law and governance based on secular citizenship and human rights norms. These are norms that, along with others worldwide, people have struggled to establish within formal domestic and international legal systems. Now, at a time when we are threatened with a loss of the Human Rights Act, concerns about makeup and terms of reference of the inquiry raise profound issues of constitutionality, legality, and democratic accountability. It's for this reason that an unprecedented number of women and human rights campaigners from across the world have come together to endorse this open letter to Theresa May, at the time the Home Secretary, now the Prime Minister. What the open letter says is that as a group of women's human rights organisations and campaigners, they want to express their profound concern and their disappointment with the terms of reference and recent appointments to the government's, independent review on Sharia councils and arbitration forms in the UK. For several years, these organisations have been highly critical of such things, and one of the things they've really struggled with is that they have absolutely no support from people who should actually be their allies. It's like it's kind of like what I said before when it comes to female genital mutilation. If it were happening to a white girl, police would be kicking down the doors, but because it's not a white girl, they're from other cultures. It's like, okay, we've got to pussyfoot around, beware of cultural sensitivities, and basically not give them the same protection that they give their white peers. I don't know why so many leftists and self-called feminists abandon their darker skinned sisters. I really don't, and I say that as someone who would naturally describe myself as a leftist and a feminist. It baffles me. It really does. But yeah, it's basically it's accommodated all these cultural claptraps and the fact that they've had no support from what should be their natural allies. There's considerable evidence of human rights violations of minority women in these certain things. What with what I just mentioned about how what should be the natural allies, particularly white people, who are those that usually have the organizations and the actual pulling power. You know, what's alarmed these women is the growing acceptance of such laws to govern private and family matters, areas where arguably the greatest human rights violations of minority women in the UK take place. There's considerable evidence to show how these parallel legal systems operate in ways that violate the fundamental principles of protection, equality, and non-discrimination in respect of women's rights in relation to marriage, divorce, children, property, and inheritance. Precisely for these reasons, as I said, they did welcome the independent review, believing it to be a genuine attempt to look at the work of Sharia councils and Muslim tribunals in the UK in a context of rising religious extremism and fundamentalism. And they've basically realised that they've been fed a carrot and a stick. So they're now demanding 5 issues that have to be redressed and re-looked at. And these 5 things the women's organisations are demanding. The first is the terms of reference of the review. Now, the terms have ruled out a full evaluation of the harm caused by the existence of discriminatory religious legal meditation and arbitration systems. Their information suggests that the existence of parallel or informal justice systems in itself creates conflicts in law and gaps in human rights protection, yet they note that the review is not addressing this vital issue. Instead, the terms of reference suggest that the task of the review is to improve the functioning of systems that are in themselves discriminatory. And they urge the government to remove wording on seeking out examples of best practice. Instead, what the review should be free to examine whether the existence of Sharia councils, meditation and arbitrational systems undermine access to justice and indeed undermine the Constitution by endorsing the existence of parallel legal systems. One of the focuses is on the panel. Now, although some of those appointed to the panel come from judicial and family children law backgrounds, 2 Islamic scholars have been appointed as advisors to the chair. Mona Siddique, who is herself a theologian. Now, this is cause for alarm. The government has constituted a panel more suited to a discussion on theology than one which serves the needs of victims and is capable of investigating the full range of harms caused by Sharia councils and tribunals, particularly for women. Now, what they're saying is that the inquiry panel should be an impartial, judge-led investigation into the entire spectrum of human rights violations caused by the existence and functioning of Sharia councils and tribunals. It should be clearly framed as a human rights investigation, not a theological one. Now, there's also competences of advisors in the panel. The inquiry should be properly advised by women's rights advocates and legal experts in British and foreign laws and international human rights covenants. Advisors to the panel need to have a track record of respecting and protecting human rights, particularly those of women. They need to understand the impacts of informal justice and parallel legal systems on women and other minorities. They need to be convergent with existing laws regarding, for instance, the recognition of civil divorce in many jurisdictions, and be able to find appropriate experts to give evidence to the panel. They also need to be able to assist the panel to investigate transnational fundamentalist networks in promoting Sharia law in different countries and their role in Britain. They need to be fearless in looking for evidence, even if it implicates powerful interests. Now, another point that they say quite plainly is that imams are not the right advisors. Okay.
But basically,
Theologians
saying
and
what happened in America.
Theologians and religious scholars simply do not have the required skills or knowledge of existing legal practice and constitutional issues. A knowledge of theology is simply not the same as a knowledge of the law, either in Britain or elsewhere. The government should be wary of replicating the most problematic aspects of multiculturalism in the Constitution of the Review. Many legal academics in Britain promote legal pluralism, which they see as community-based law. This theological approach to law tends to ignore statutory law and evolving case law in countries that have Sharia or Muslim personal laws. The Law Society took this approach with its practical note on Sharia-compliant wills. It advised solicitors to ask an imam when drawing up a will. And if anyone who was aware of this may recall, the Law Society was forced to withdraw their guidance because it was not only legally discriminatory, but dangerously negligent. And the government must not repeat the mistakes of the Law Society. Another point is that imams and scholars cannot investigate themselves. Both scholars advising the panel are on a website called Imams Online. Now, the terms of reference state that the role of particular groups and Islamic authorities in England and Wales should be examined. The inquiry should not be deterred from investigating a particular platform because they are advisors to the platform, nor can the inquiry be seen as impartial as it's charged with investigating itself. We are aware of extremely problematic positions taken by scholars on Imams Online on a range of issues that should certainly cause concern for the inquiry. Issues before the inquiry, it's absolutely vital that the inquiry to include examinations of whether violations of human rights are condoned or even promoted by Sharia bodies. Some examples are women's testimony being worth half that of a man, marital rape, sexual violence, domestic abuse, the age of consent, guardianship, forced marriage, honor-based violence, ritual abuse, child custody, child protection, polygamy, divorce, sexuality, interreligious relationships, female dress codes, abortion, broader issues such as the treatment of religious minorities, including minority sects in Islam, decisions pertaining to apostasy and blasphemy must also be examined to understand the full range of threats faced by people who are affected by religious laws and indeed by the state promoting these laws. The reasons why Sharia councils and other religious aberration bodies have operated with impunity needs to be carefully examined. The inquiry should be able to summon witnesses who will give evidence of whether local councils, police, or departments of government have developed working relations with Sharia councils, and whether these relationships have undermined the protection principle laid out in key legislation on discrimination and the rights of women and children, and or shielded them from adequate scrutiny. Has the goal of preventing violent extremism actually led to strengthening relations with fundamentalist networks and individuals? Another issue is implications for the scope and impartiality of the inquiry. The terms of reference and the composition of the panel amount to an acceptance of a theological basis for laws for citizens from minority communities. Furthermore, they evidenced a capitulation to religious and conservative forces who wish to ensure that the needs and identity of minority women are addressed only through the prism of conservative religious values, of which they are the sole guardians. In effect, rather than being treated as independent persons with citizenship and human rights, minority women are regarded as members of their so-called religious communities who are assumed to be subjected to religious codes. As the people who issued the letter understand it, the review was meant to be not about religious or theological issues categorized as either moderate or extreme, but an examination of women's access to rights and justice. It's a patronizing, if not racist, to fob off minority women with so-called religious experts who are self-serving and who wish to legitimate Sharia laws as a form of governance in family and private matters. Even if some women appear to want this, nobody can stand by and watch the state being complicit in underwriting second-rate systems of justice, whereby minority women are treated as unequal before the law. By making these religious appointments, the government has lost a vital opportunity to examine the discriminatory nature of not only Sharia councils, but all forms of religious arbitration, including the Beit Din. The fear is that in these circumstances, many vulnerable women simply will not want to give their testimony before theologians who legitimate and justify the very view of Sharia laws on the grounds that it's integral to their Muslim identity. Indeed, the panel is set up much like Sharia courts themselves. The makeup of the review panel betrays a complete absence of representation of the voices of the victims themselves and of women's human rights organizations that have first-hand experience of the human rights violations that take place in Sharia councils and other religious arbitrations. They see and applaud the consideration given to victims of injustice in the context of other government reviews and inquiries, such as those established to examine historic child abuse cases and the Hillsborough disaster. But you'd have expected the same care and consideration to be given to the victims of Sharia councils. Black and minority women deserve the right to have a review that is led by a judge and aided by human rights experts, including those from across the world who have confronted religious personal laws and jurisdictional challenges in the furtherance of human rights. Now, the actual demands of these organizations stated in the letter are 1 to 3. The actual demands. 1. Ensure that the terms of reference are broad enough to have a thorough inquiry into the full range of human rights concerns raised by Sharia councils and tribunals. 2. Appoint a judge to head the inquiry with the powers to compel witnesses to appear before it. The inquiry panel should be an impartial investigation into the entire spectrum of human rights violations caused by the existence and functioning of Sharia councils and tribunals. 3. Drop the inappropriate theological approach and appoint experts with knowledge of women's human rights, those who can properly and independently examine how Sharia systems of arbitration in family matters can contravene key human rights principles of equality before the law, duty of care, due diligence, and the rule of law. The inquiry must be clearly framed as a human rights investigation, not a theological one. And then there's a note: the law and not religion is a key basis for securing justice for all citizens. We urge you to do the right thing to ensure that the same principles of human rights, equality before the law, duty of care, due diligence, and the rule of law are applicable to all British citizens. And then there's a shitload of signatures. Finally, we're good. Very happy about that. Lots of signatures.
Raven, who made this claim?
May actually take up on it, but I really hope she does. But you know, the really funny thing is, do you remember about a month ago when I was on this show, and I mentioned that in Yorkshire there were 2 women. It hit the papers. There were 2 Muslim women from Yorkshire that rang the police. Like, one rang because they thought that their husband was going to kidnap their child and take him to Pakistan or Syria or some shit. And another rang the police to report domestic violence. And remember I told you, both of them were told by the authorities to contact a Sharia court. Fucking unbelievable, man.
But Raven, I didn't quite understand the last bit. Who were making these claims? Who were the ones who were making these demands?
Where is it? I actually listed like a number of people. Well, there's Diana Naomi.
Okay, so these were feminist groups. This was not a government.
There's been a number of signatures.
No, that's not what I mean.
Some are signed by individuals.
Okay, but it's not
signed by actual organizations.
Okay, these are organizations, but not a government department.
Well, no, but it's basically charitable organisations. You know, the Iranian Kurdish Women's Rights Organisation, Women's Rights Campaigners, Centre for Secular Space, One Law for All, British Muslims for Secular Democracy.
Okay, no, don't read the whole list, please. No.
I was given a few examples, like organisations.
Okay, I have one question because I did not expect this level of detail now. Because you said
Sorry,
you were just going to give a high-level overview. What can you maybe just give us, like in a nutshell, a summary of what you've just said? Because to be quite honest, I got a little bit lost between who is saying what about whom. Could you just summarize this?
Theresa May, when she was Home Secretary, promised an independent inquiry into possible human rights violations and discrimination on women and minorities in Sharia councils, and basically she just fucked them over. You know, she said, let's just let Muslims sort it out. It's a Muslim problem, and these people are saying, no, it's not a fucking Muslim problem. It's a human being problem. Don't treat us like scum. We're not second-class citizens.
I'm wondering if there is any group, like if I don't know, I don't know. Give me a group. Give me any kind of a union or union of something. Carpenters. Could carpenters go and say this is a carpenter issue? We are going to solve this in our carpenters' courts.
I don't know. If someone made some sort of religious sect about carpentry because Jesus was a carpenter, I don't know. I don't know. Well, the thing, where Sharia courts actually come from in relation to England, it was actually what they're doing. They're actually taking advantage of a pre-existing law which existed for Jews. Jews, but I think it was in the 1900s. Sorry, the 1800s, the 19th century. They actually wanted the ability, because there was a lot of discrimination going on against Jews back then, which should be no surprise to anyone. And they actually petitioned the government to actually let them sort it out amongst themselves. You know, Jews will take care of their own problems. And the idea was, okay, when it comes to the big things, when it's murder, when it's theft, things like that, that is a matter for the state. Where if it's just civil courts that you agree to abide by, okay, we'll let you do that. And so Sharia councils are basically, they're legal because they're just using a law which was set up for Jews to let them handle their own civil matters. But what the Sharia courts are doing, they've actually extended beyond civil matters to the point, because they have to be UK compliant, you know. If someone wants to go to a Sharia court or a Jewish court, then what they do is they agree to abide by the decisions of this court, but they're only supposed to deal in civil matters, only civil matters, and it has to be compatible with British law. And the point of wanting the inquiry is because it's felt that Sharia councils are overstepping their bounds. They're actually giving Sharia rulings which are not compatible with what I would say real law.
Okay, so what is the stance now of Theresa May? Is she going to say we need to curb this, or is she saying no, we can expand this?
I don't know. She's too busy promising to press the big red button and nuke people if she has to.
Okay, so so in the future, nobody really knows where this is going, because I was hoping that somebody would take control now, because the problem is that the UK doesn't have a constitution, okay? And there's nobody who can say, listen, we have some basic rules, we have laws here which go against what you are proposing, and therefore we're going to shut you down. There is no such thing.
I think I bored Frank so much he left.
I've been watching a lot of videos on the TJ's YouTube site, and there seems to be a recurrent theme going on there with the American government having a very staunch decision that it's the Muslim Brotherhood, people like CARE and the multitude of organisations that are backed by them and share their ideology, should be part of the discussion, and it's got to the point that they dictate American policy when it comes to Islam. And I think what's happened in the UK and in Europe with Merkel, etc., is the influence of American policy has filtered down, and now people like Theresa May are actually saying what America's saying, because America is the big brother who is dictating what the world should think. And of course America is thinking what the Muslim Brotherhood says we should think.
I remember a quote from Christopher Hitchens back in the days when he was still London-based, and he said that he was with a load of other reporters and journalists for this civil rights campaign for the States, and he was talking about, I can't remember which president it was, but he basically said, he's not just my president, he's your president too. And Hitchens said that everyone groaned because they all knew it was true.
Yeah, and this is why I said it's a pity that there is nobody there to put their foot down and say, listen, this is against the Constitution, this is against the Vienna Convention, this is against all societal rules that we have, and therefore, please fuck off.
We do have those sorts of institutions, these sort of constitutions that you say we don't have. For example, the United Kingdom is a part of the Court of Human Rights, which has statutes. The United Kingdom is part of the United Nations, which has statutes. And we can all point to those statutes and say you are breaking these fundamental rules that apply to humanity. But you've also got governments and people who get power and a lust for power and its greatness, who say, you have voted me in, I will do whatever the fuck I want. And they do.
So
Theresa May is no different to Erdogan. She's got the power, she is going to use it, and it's only a matter of whether she decides to do it his way or her way.
So why are you saying I'm wrong and then you repeat exactly what I just said?
No, you said we don't have something that a citizen like you and I could point and say, you are breaking a fundamental rule here. We've got those rules.
No, I said you don't have a constitution.
They ignore them.
Okay, doesn't
That's
matter.
why these people end up going to court and taking people like Theresa May for breaking human rights, and her getting into tantrums saying we must now get rid of the Court of Human Rights.
Okay, but the first thing I want to do now is say, Raven, thank you very much for the contribution. Thank you very much for the work that you've done to look into this and to bring forward...
It was very easy. Everyone else did the work. I just read it.
No, but come on, that's exactly the point. What I think I heard is that a lot of what you said is that it concerns women only. So that the Sharia courts seem to handle mostly family affairs.
Well, they're biased in favor of men.
Sorry, say again?
They're biased in favor of men, and it doesn't really matter. The thing is, what courts usually do in the UK is that they look at you as an individual, right? Like let's say for instance you're a mother and a father and you're fighting for custody of your child. What the court will do is that they will decide who the child will be better off with. They will decide based on the individual man and the individual woman who will be the better parent, who will be the better provider. What Sharia courts are doing is just basically saying, we're not even going to bother with that. We know what Sharia says. Are the above 7, right? He has a penis, he gets them.
Well, it's a little even more complicated than that, because UK law is forever changing. Let me finish. UK law is forever changing. 2 weeks ago, it was a point where if you went and one had a divorce, the woman would be given a meal ticket for life, as it was quoted. A judge recently says you can no longer have this meal ticket for life, and now all divorces under the system can be challenged, and women who were getting a lot of money from ex-husbands can now lose it all. But Sharia picks up the Qur'an and says, well, Muhammad did this, so we will. That's the difference.
Well, yeah, because this is just basically what the law does. Is the law is always second to cultural change. There will be a change in culture, and then
And
the
the
law will
follows it,
change in
yes.
relation to that always after. You know, back in the day, it was the very humane thing to do for women to actually get payouts because they usually weren't educated, they didn't have a job. I mean, it's only recently, you know, the women have even been allowed in the workforce and not been
And allowed
demonized
to vote,
for it.
yes.
I'm sure that I'm not sure how old you are, GP, but I'm assuming that your mother,
54.
you're 54. I would assume that your mother or grandmother probably lived in a time when women couldn't even vote or go to
My
university.
mother wasn't even educated. She couldn't
Yeah,
go to school
exactly.
because of the war.
Yeah, but that's a fantastic point. So it really did make sense for the
Okay.
laws to be what they were as far as being humane goes. But obviously now there's been such a cultural shift, and you know, men and women have got equal opportunities now, and so many women more and more women are taking advantage of these opportunities and able to support themselves as individuals and not basically being being treated as a child from cradle to the grave. And now the law's catching up to it.
And
Right,
it's
can I
not
just ask you a
compatible
question?
with a religious law that was invented 1400 years ago and does not take the current 21st century way of doing things.
Well, that's just why it's becoming more and more and more irrelevant. You know, I was talking to someone a while ago, and I just says to him, you keep complaining about your brothers and sisters and all the shit that's going on, and you know, like your home country being left behind. And I just basically said what you just said, and I just said what Islam is doing right now, because it's stuck in such pluralism, it's desperately figuring out how to survive in a world that, quite frankly, has already moved on.
Yeah, I mean, when my parents were starting out, they could get a house, and they had I was one of about 4 children, but you try doing that in your generation. You won't be able to get a house like they did. Not unless
My
you have some kind of super job.
You know, because GP, I told you a while ago that I actually come from an Irish Catholic family. My grandfather was one of 17 children, and my grandmother was one of 14 children. And I've actually got an aunt, a great aunt. She's my grandma's sister. She's given birth 20 times.
Oh, goodness. Raven, can I just ask my question again that I tried to ask before?
Yes, my dick is huge.
The thing
But it'd
is,
have to be, it would wear out. 20 kids,
is,
be the size of a peanut by the end of that.
is Sharia in the UK discussing things outside of family law? Like, do they go into contract law? Do they go into penal law? Or is it only?
They actually
family
have
law?
been trying. They actually have been trying to do this. I'm not sure what
What?
the extent is, but I do remember a couple of years ago, Muslims were all sort of puffed up and feeling good about themselves and claiming that even non-Muslims are now actually going to Sharia courts to settle business disputes because they say that Sharia courts are quicker, fairer, and easier.
Okay, but because the thing that what I heard from you is 99% was all about females, women, and family matters, but nothing else. Is my impression correct?
That is basically what it's supposed to be about. It's supposed to deal with civil matters only. But again, as I said, it's also supposed to be compatible with the laws of wider society, which it's increasingly not.
Parking tickets.
You know, I mean, instead of actually being compatible, it's basically like okay, let's look at what actual law says, and then let's basically just try and fit it in a religious mode. As long as it's compatible, that's okay. There's no problem. People have agreed to do it, but it's not doing that. It's not giving rulings that are compatible. It's actually going the opposite way to the point it can rightfully be considered human rights violations.
And we're
An
then
act of
saying the women
discrimination.
protesting because they're the ones who have been most affected by this. If the business world was being affected, you find businessmen joining into the group and arguing against it. But at the moment, it's mostly women and women with interests against Sharia.
I'm just absolutely ecstatic that so many women from these communities are actually doing this and not being silent, because for so long they were.
Well,
For so long,
Qur'an,
it was,
isn't it?
it was like, don't let wider society know. Keep it behind closed doors. And the fact that they're actually saying, you know what, I live in this country. I'm a citizen. I have the right to be heard and to offer change. And they're actually starting to do it. They're starting to take advantage of their rights and just.
Okay, but who knows?
May it continue. May it continue. May it spread.
Yeah, but who knows about this?
Well, I'm an optimist.
No, but hang on. You found this, but this is not out in the general public, is it?
Well, I mean, I actually found it from a Guardian article that mentioned it, and I just gave a link to it. Although the article itself, it was basically like a paragraph. So,
Okay,
so
so
I'm
it's
just gonna.
known in the general public that there are newspapers reporting about this.
I would have to look it up, and I'm just gonna nip off because my throat is incredibly dry and I need water.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you very much. Brilliant stuff. This is the kind of thing that I like, where people are giving inside information, looking at a topic, and then going down into a little bit of detail to give us some insight. Like next week, we're going to have, I hope I didn't piss him off, because I thought that Raven was just going to give a 5-minute overview over the situation in the UK about Sharia and Theresa May, how she's going to handle it. And then I thought we were going to have Abu talking about free will. But now Abu has prepared a whole long essay about this, so we're going to do this next week. So remember, next week we're going to have Abu Mulhid, and he's going to be talking about free will. Okay, anything else that we want to add, talk, discuss, suggest? Question?
The whole principle of Sharia courts is just absolutely laughable, because it's like, oh, you can have your Sharia. I must have said this before, but it's like you can have your Sharia courts as long as they completely agree with British law. Well, or English and Welsh law, if they agree with that, why the bloody hell are you wasting time with Sharia courts? Just go to an English court.
Yeah, but there you need to wait half a year.
Wait half a year?
Yeah.
Why?
Because they're so overloaded.
Well, that's just an issue with the court system. It's not a reason to introduce religious courts.
Well, this is why. That's why you get arbitration, for example, to shorten the time
between. It costs too much. I've no longer got legal aid.
GP, you were talking while I was talking. Now nobody heard either one of us.
Yeah, but I mean, you're saying things which are not wrong. You're saying it's taking too long. It's not because it's taking too long. It's because the government has removed legal aid, so you have to pay for the court, so people don't want to go anymore. And Sharia's are dirt cheap.
Okay.
Also fast.
Yeah. And religious, which is a plus for the religious people.
I don't think a society can maintain cohesion if it has more than one legal system. I think it's just you're asking for.
It doesn't work. Multiculturalism just does not work.
You're asking for a complete lack of societal cohesion.
No, GP, I actually disagree with you there. It's not multiculturalism. It's parallel cultures. Multiculturalism just means that you can have more than one culture. You can celebrate Christmas, or let's have the lights up for Diwali, for Eid, whatever. I mean, that's basically what multiculturalism is. It's just different. It's just different cultural traditions, which in itself not necessarily a bad thing. What makes it a bad thing isn't necessarily multiculturalism. It's parallel cultures, and that's the problem, because you cannot have parallel cultures living side by side, particularly in a country like England, which is an island nation. We're not big enough to have parallel societies. We're just not. It doesn't work. It never works.
You've always got to have an overarching culture, though. I'd say multiculturalism doesn't work if you take it too far. You've always got to have an overarching culture. Everyone's got to feel British, because otherwise you.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, taking it too far is, as I've just said, parallel cultures.
Well, but you can't have gender equality and not have gender equality. That doesn't work.
The distinction without a difference. Multiculturalism, parallel cultures. That's just the logical end of multiculturalism.
But if you decide that you're going to drive on the left, you can't have half the population drive on the right and half the population drive on the left. That doesn't work.
But what about the people who want to drive in the middle? That's why multiculturalism just doesn't work in any shape or form, because everybody wants to do their own thing, and they cannot do it. Otherwise, you'd have people wanting holidays whenever they fancy it, and the school system says, no, you can't, and we'll fine you.
Yeah, then it's like in
Was there
Indonesia.
something about the school system actually
I was using that
achieving
as
the
an
dates of
example.
stats or something to accommodate Muslims?
But I just use it as an example. Multiculturalism can only work if it's a case of me looking at your culture and saying, I like that, I will eat that curry because I like curry.
Yeah, so and that's not multiculturalism. That's adapting your culture. So it's still a single culture. It's just a culture that's adapted.
It forces me to eat curries because it will give me the shits, and I will be unhappy.
Okay, so now that we've discussed that, how can I bring this back to the original topic? How much can we discuss Islam? What are we still allowed to say about Islam if we're looking at the UK, if we're looking at Europe,
Increasingly
the system
less.
that the Muslims are trying to install inside Europe?
Well,
Increasingly less.
it's not just Europe. You remember a while ago, TJ did that presentation on what the Muslims did in India, how it was like the worst genocide ever. Well, recently what's happened is that Muslim organizations in the US have actually got US schools to change the curriculum and whitewash the history of this to take out Islamophobic contents.
Oh, really?
I really wish TJ was here.
Like the history of India. That's pretty Islamophobic.
They're
Let me
actively doing
tell you
it
what,
on the social networks by censoring people's posts.
I just want to see if I can look that up. But yeah, that entire thing that
No, I don't want to
TJ
spend
did.
another hour on this now. I'm just trying to get an overview. So what you're saying is that there are actually governmental departments, namely the education department, which is saying, okay, we can change the history according to what
It's
Muslims
pressure
want.
groups,
Well, I don't think they're not government. They're just pressure groups.
and they're influencing the government departments with financial bribes and pressure. For instance, I could say from now on, YouTube, don't feature stop spamming on YouTube anymore because it is Islamophobic, and the whole
That's
of
exactly
YouTube
what
says
happened.
you are banned.
Well, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and that's what's happening more and more. It's just a game of whispers, like this Game of Thrones, going on in the background, and people are saying, "Oh, I don't want to be called a racist. I'm going to ban this lot. I don't want to be called a racist. I'm going to remove this text from this textbook." It's happening so often now. It's
I think fewer and fewer people are getting bothered about being called a racist, though. I mean, obviously the term has been so overused, it's lost most of its meaning.
I think
I noticed it fighting back. I mean, I've heard things on talk radio recently, which has had the presenters who have been sort of like apologists foaming at the mouth and cutting these people off instantly because they've been challenging the religion of peace narrative. It's been quite incredible.
Now, instead of complaining all the time,
what's
is
this
there anything that we can do to actually take back freedom of speech and freedom of expression? Is there anything that we can actively do?
Well, yeah.
Well, the biggest thing to do that is to actually just realise the distinction. I mean, I actually, it's almost like people think that like not real leftists, not real liberals, these regressive twats. I refuse to call them progressives, but not. They're regressive morons. Well, they basically seem to think that words and actions are the exact same thing. They seem to think that if you say, "I don't like you," there's literally no difference between that and punching someone in the face. That is the only thing that makes sense to me when I try to understand them.
Okay, but now you're doing exactly that. You are complaining, but you're not doing anything. You're not making a suggestion, a constructive.
What you do is you spread the word, you keep on saying what is happening, you're honest about it, and if you're challenged, you try and back up what you say with examples and facts.
So what you're saying is information.
Here's an example.
Information. Over to you.
Here's an example. If, for instance, people are saying that anything you say about Muhammad or the Quran is Islamophobic, which is a misnomer anyway, but if it's based on reality and the text, Well, then you have to go to the text, because when you look at the Quran and it says things like Allah loves Muslims, but he hates non-Muslims, do not take Jews and Christians as your friends, then you'd have to ban the Quran, period, because that has had 14 the text of hate.
Okay, so you're also saying provide information.
But the information is the key to anything. It's the truth and reality. If truth is now the new hate speech, then we may as well just go up there and lie every time we say anything.
Right.
Well, some of it is just ridiculous, though. Like earlier this week in I think it were in Germany, jihadists didn't jihadists like blow up a Sikh temple, and like the official response was, "Oh, it's not terrorism."
Probably.
I don't know what that was. I did not hear about it.
Where did the whole concept of hate speech even come from? Because I remember when I was a kid, I'd never even heard of the term, and it just sort of came along, and now it's just a given that, oh, if it's hate speech, you're not allowed to say it. I totally oppose the whole that whole premise.
Hate speech started off as a good idea, but it got perverted in universities to mean something completely different.
Well, how did it start off even as a good idea?
I think it's the LGBT movement.
It started off as a good idea because back in my generation, in the 80s and 70s, you had people go around saying packies.
Yeah, but I don't think that should be. I think it's more important to defend the freedom of speech than to ban it.
No, it wasn't about. It was really just being insulting and causing trouble.
Yeah,
and
but that's still free speech.
And having a bit of aggro. Free speech should never be about having violence.
Yes, it should. You should be. Well, it should never be about what? Sorry.
Violence just for the sake of it.
That just sounds like an arbitrary exception.
No, it was like hate speech was when you had people like the Nazis going around preaching falsehoods about people to make people angry and cause violence. That was the hate speech. But the university sociology classes started perverting it and having things like you can only be racist if you've got power. So black people will never be racist, but only white people will be because they're the only ones with power. That's the sort of bullshit that's been taught.
I need to jump in. I need to jump in here. I can't remember if it was in the UK or the US or both, but there's this thing going on now to say that gay men should not be allowed to chair LGBT groups. Particularly if you're white, because like if you're
a minority, they have
if you're a white gay man, then society has moved on so much that you probably haven't even had a bad life if you're white and gay or just male and gay. So they're actually now saying, because they don't understand what it's like to be discriminated about, they're saying that gay men shouldn't.
Okay, but then I think the whole point was to separate the brown shirts or right wings or conservatives or from whatever, to stop them saying, let's go bash some gays, let's go bash some niggers, or what they used to say. I can't remember what it was. So these things were stopped. So you're no longer allowed to use this, what they call the N-word. So
that's how it started, but then you start getting the...
supposed to not be using anymore today. And I think this is where it came from, where they started calling it hate speech, because it was calling for others to hate a specific group. That's the whole origin of it.
I think that once you establish the principle that we're going to arbitrarily say this is unacceptable, you're inevitably going to have people corrupting that and what's the word? Just misusing that or using that for their own purposes. So it's just inevitable. You can't start going down that road of saying we're going to arbitrarily say this is the really nasty speech that's unacceptable, because who's to say what counts as unacceptable? I mean, this whole hate speech thing. Who are we to say that they're not right? That we should be allowed to say this stuff? Unless you adopt the principle that all free speech is allowed, all speech is allowed.
What happened as a problem was summed up by a politician back after the terrorism laws came out. He said the spirit of the anti-terrorism laws, the intent of the spirit, was perverted by the police, so we got a problem where policemen were arresting people taking photographs in London under the anti-terrorism laws. That was never the intent of the law, and they wanted to make sure that people understood that now in the police force. So that's where you got your problem with the freedom of speech. You can say something as a law, but you've got to then interpret it so people understand what the law actually means. And
Well, about 2 or 3 years ago, Florida passed a law saying that driver's licenses have to be in English. You know, because obviously English is the dominant language in Florida, but there's a number of other dialects. There's Spanish, there's Cuban, there's whatever. And they just said, okay, they passed a law in Florida 2 or 3 years ago. Driver's licenses have to be in English. Now, there were a load of people from English-speaking countries, actual people from England, who invented the English language. And, you know, their license is clearly in English. People from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, licenses clearly in English. And they were getting nicked because they had their licenses and not an American one.
wasn't written in American English, you mean?
But that's the thing, it was written in English, which the law said it had to be. But they just interpreted it as meaning had to be issued in America.
Yeah, but that's a US thing. I mean, they have the World Championship of football, I don't know, throwing or something, which is a very local thing. The same as the Scottish have the World Championship in pole throwing and things like that.
I always refer to American football as like a pussy version of rugby.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's not get into that discussion. Let us now say thank you very much for the contributions that you've made. We've gone through a 2-hour session of the Gin&Tonic show, and all that remains to be done now is to read the Hadith of the week.
Oh, well, one thing just before that. I don't know if you'd want to get TJ in and then actually discuss, because it is very fascinating to me that Muslim organizations actually would convince a California school syllabus to rewrite history. And I don't know if you'd want to get TJ in and have a conversation about that, or I could just give you the link now and you can just put it in the description.
Okay, then I will just write this down. TJ on US textbooks.
He's been quite active on YouTube. He's been posting up videos every other day now.
Okay, so I won't give a link now. I'll just like, or shall I give it now and we'll talk about it next week anyway?
Well, next week we're going to have free will from Abu. Then give me the link. I will send this to DJ and ask him if he wants to prepare something on this for the week after.
Okay. Now I should actually say the site itself, twocircles.net. I've never even seen that site before I saw this story. It was just by chance. So I don't know how legitimate the site is, but you know, it seems to be like an accurate. It seems to be like an accurate story. I googled a little bit.
Okay, we'll take a look. And
I do not know how reliable the site overall is.
It's an opinion. Okay, we don't need to call it the gospel truth or fact or something. It depends on what TJ wants to do with it. So we'll just see from next week what we're going to do with that. Okay, any other last words? Brilliant. Then I will go and proceed with the Hadith of the week. Which
how about we actually start a petition that Donald Trump, if he actually does do what I recommended with fucking the world, if he gets elected, like we all start a petition and we sign it and we send it to him.
Well, I mean, it's very easy. Get a wig, get a photo of the White House, go get a blue screen and go and do it yourself. It's not so difficult. But I think, come on, the guy is going to be president. He's going to be impeached after 6 months, and then everybody's left with Penzi. So there you go.
Why is he going to be impeached? I actually think Americans are quite stupid for not voting for Bernie Sanders.
And it took you how long to work that out?
You've got to be joking. Bernie Sanders is totally regressive on Islam. He wouldn't do jack shit to counter the problem. The only person that has any chance of doing that is Trump.
No, I have to admit, I don't know what Bernie Sanders' policies are when it comes to Islamic terrorism.
Well, he's a typical regressive leftist.
It doesn't matter who the president is. He's not the only person in power in America, as Obama found out when he tried to do things.
No, but they give a lead, and you've got to have the president on board to get anything done on an issue, haven't you?
Not really. Did you see how many things Obama passed?
No, but he can block. What they can do is block. They can block action, can't they?
Well, Republican Congress did pretty much blocked every single thing that Obama tried to implement. You know, funnily enough, when it comes to things like Medicare, which originally were leftist ideals, I think it was President Reagan who said that if Medicare was passed, then we would be telling our children about a time when America was free.
Did you know that if you take the "and from Santa" and put it at the end, that it becomes Satan?
I did say he was a paedophile.
Okay.
Did you know that
I am going to read the Hadith of the week, and then I'm going to cancel the show. And if anybody wants to continue discussing U.S. politics, then bloody well go ahead and do it on your own. Nobody who is interested in Islam is interested in your opinion and your speculation on what is going to happen in the U.S.
I think America's bad.
This is
Canada.
from Sahih Bukhari.
Did
and
you
it's
know
from
that
book number
therapist
4,
literally
and it's
says the
chapter
rapist?
56, and the chapter is the Sahih, sorry, and the Hadith number is 779. So it's 456 and it's 779. Once we were with Allah's apostle on a journey, and we ran short of water. And he said, he is now Muhammad, bring the water remaining with you. The people brought a utensil containing a little water. He placed his hand in it and said, come to the blessed water, and the blessing is from Allah. I saw the water flowing from among the fingers of Allah's apostle, and no doubt we heard the meal glorifying Allah when it was being eaten by Muhammad.
Paul Daniels did the same thing.
That's it.
Even better than the Santa thing, therapist literally says the rapist. That's way better than Santa. You don't even have to add on an extra letter. You just put a space.
Okay, are we done for today? Thank you very much, everybody.
Good night.
That was
Good
for
night,
Raven.
and
Thank you very much for your contribution and for reading everything, and we shall see each other next week when the topic will be free will. Thanks, everybody. See you next week. Bye.
I really hope TJ reacts to what happened in California. Bye-bye.